Dr. N had waited 7 years to examine a living human. 7 long years of reading reports, watching videos, and wondering if the strange creatures from Earth were really as weak as everyone said. Now, finally, one sat on his examination table aboard the Galactic Union ship called Serenity's Mandate. The human was a female named Sarah. Her file said she was a lieutenant commander in the human space force. She was small, very small. N stood almost 3 meters tall on his 6 legs, his body covered in hard brown shell-like armor. Sarah barely reached the middle of his chest. She had soft skin the color of light wood, black hair tied behind her head, and eyes so dark they looked like 2 drops of space itself. She sat very still as he walked around her. Most species became nervous when he examined them. His kind, though, looked frightening to many aliens. They had bodies like giant insects, with sharp edges and clicking mouths. But Sarah just watched him with those strange dark eyes, her face showing nothing at all. N found this interesting. He found everything about humans interesting. He turned on his scanner and began recording notes into his medical log. The holographic display floated in the air beside him, showing all the information about human biology that the Galactic Union had collected. "Remarkable," he said, more to himself than to her. His voice came out as clicks and whistles, but his translator turned it into words she could understand. "Truly remarkable how your species survived at all." Sarah's eyes moved to look at him. "What do you mean?" N gestured at the floating display with one of his 4 arms. "Your biology, Lieutenant Commander, it is. Well, I do not wish to be rude, but it is surprisingly primitive for a spacefaring species." "Primitive?" Sarah repeated. Her voice was flat like a still pond. "Your skeleton is inside your body instead of outside," N explained, walking slowly around her. "This provides almost no protection. Your bones are made of calcium, a weak mineral that breaks under minimal stress. According to our data, human bones fracture easily from impacts that would not even scratch my outer shell." He stopped in front of her, looking down at her small form. "You have no natural armor, no claws worth mentioning, no venom, no acid, no electrical organs. Your teeth are blunt, useful for chewing plants more than fighting. And when you are injured, your body takes weeks to heal. Weeks. My kind can regrow a lost limb in 3 days." Sarah said nothing. She just kept watching him. N found her silence slightly uncomfortable, though he did not know why. He continued anyway. "The Galactic Union has accepted humanity's request to join. This is good. We welcome all peaceful species. But I must confess, Lieutenant Commander, many of us wonder how humans survived long enough to leave your planet. Your world, this Earth, is classified as a Category 7 death world. Extreme temperature changes, dangerous predators, natural disasters, toxic plants and animals everywhere. Yet you evolved with none of the usual survival tools." He walked to his examination table and patted it proudly. The table was made of titanium alloy, the strongest metal commonly used in the galaxy. It had cost him 2 years of salary, but it was worth it. The table had survived impacts from warriors, a species known for their violent tempers and incredible strength. Not a scratch on it. "This table," he said, "has withstood forces that would turn your entire skeleton to powder. I do not say this to frighten you. I say this because I am genuinely curious. How did your kind survive?" Sarah looked at the table, then back at him. "We managed." "Yes, but how?" N's antennae twitched with genuine curiosity. "The ambassador called humans persistence predators. He said you hunted by following prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. But surely that cannot be the whole answer. Many species can run for long periods. What makes humans different?" For the first time, something changed in Sarah's face. It was small, just a tiny movement at the corner of her mouth. N's species was very good at reading faces, even alien ones, but he could not understand what this expression meant. "You want to know what makes us different?" Sarah asked. "Very much so. It is a medical mystery." Sarah was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was still calm, but there was something underneath it, something N could not identify. "We break," she said simply. "That is what makes us different. We break, Dr. N. Our bones break, our skin tears, our bodies fail. We get sick, we get injured, we get old and weak. Everything about us breaks eventually." N clicked his mandibles in confusion. "This does not explain your survival. This explains why you should have died out long ago." I was not finished. Sarah's dark eyes held his compound ones. "We break, but we do not stop. That is the difference. When a human bone breaks, it heals back stronger than before. When we get sick, our body learns to fight that sickness. When something hurts us, we remember, and we find a way to make sure it never hurts us again." She held up her left arm. There was a thin white line on her forearm, an old scar. "I broke this arm when I was 12 years old," she said. "Fell out of a tree. It hurt more than anything I had ever felt. I could not use it for 6 weeks, but it healed. And I learned how to fall without breaking it again. I learned how to climb better. I learned that I could survive pain and come back from it." N recorded this information, though he was not sure what to do with it. "This is interesting from a medical standpoint, but I fail to see how it helped your species compete against faster and stronger predators." Sarah smiled. It was a strange expression, showing her blunt teeth. Among many species, showing teeth was a threat, but humans apparently did it when they were happy, or at least that was what the files said. Looking at Sarah's smile now, N was not entirely sure the files were correct. "You will understand eventually, Doctor," she said. "Everyone does." Before N could ask what she meant, the ship shook violently. The lights flickered and turned red. A loud alarm began to sound, and the ship's computer spoke in an emergency voice. "Warning, unknown vessels dropping out of hyperspace. We are under attack. All crew to battle stations. This is not a drill." N felt his secondary heart stop. He knew that alarm. He knew what it meant. Raiders, they were being raided. And he was alone in the medical bay with only a small, fragile human for company. The ship shook again, harder this time. N stumbled on his 6 legs, grabbing the edge of his titanium table to keep from falling. Medical instruments crashed to the floor around him. The red emergency lights made everything look like it was covered in blood. Sarah had already jumped off the examination table. She stood with her feet apart, her knees slightly bent, her body perfectly balanced. She did not fall when the ship shook. She moved with it like water in a cup. "What is happening?" N asked. His voice was higher than normal. He could feel fear spreading through his body like cold liquid. "Raiders," Sarah said. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Probably based on how they dropped out of hyperspace. They like to come in fast and close." N made a clicking sound of terror. There were monsters. They were a species that lived for violence, that collected the shells and bones of other beings as trophies. They attacked ships, killed everyone aboard, and took whatever they wanted. The Galactic Union had been fighting them for centuries, but had never been able to stop them completely. "We must hide," N said, looking around his medical bay. "There must be somewhere we can hide." Sarah did not answer. She was looking at the door, her head tilted slightly to one side. Her dark eyes had changed. They looked harder now, sharper, like stones instead of water. "They have already boarded," she said quietly. "I can hear them in the corridor." N's antennae pressed flat against his head in fear. His species had excellent hearing, but he could not hear anything except the alarms. "How can you possibly hear that?" "Experience." Sarah moved toward the door. Her steps were silent, her body low. She looked completely different from the small, soft creature that had sat on his table just minutes ago. She looked like something dangerous. "What are you doing?" N hissed. "Get away from the door, we need to hide." "No." Sarah picked up a metal bar from the floor, part of a broken shelf. She tested its weight in her hands. "You hide, stay behind the table, do not make any sounds. You cannot fight them. You are human, you are fragile, they will tear you apart." Sarah looked back at him. That strange smile was on her face again. Maybe, but I am not going to hide while people die. Before N could say anything else, the door exploded inward. He had seen pictures of warriors. Pictures did not prepare him for the real thing. 3 of them burst through the doorway, each one almost as tall as N but much wider. Their bodies were covered in black and red armor that grew from their own skin. They had too many arms, each one ending in curved blades like swords. Their faces were all teeth and eyes, with no expression except hunger. The first one saw N and screamed. It was a horrible sound, high and sharp, the sound of something that enjoyed killing. Acid dripped from its jaws, burning small holes in the floor where it fell. N could not move. His body was frozen. He could only watch as death ran toward him on too many legs. Then Sarah stepped in front of him. She was so small compared to its arm blades were longer than her entire body. It swung at her head, a blow that should have cut her in half. Sarah ducked. The blade passed over her head so close that it cut off a few strands of her black hair. Before the could swing again, she was inside its reach, too close for it to use its long arms. She swung the metal bar at its knee joint. The crack was loud. The screamed, but this time in pain instead of hunger. Its leg bent the wrong way and it started to fall. Sarah did not wait for it to hit the ground. She grabbed one of its blade arms and pulled, using the creature's own falling weight against it. The arm came off with a wet tearing sound. She was holding a blade now, a real weapon instead of a metal bar. The second charged at her. Sarah rolled to the side, came up behind it, and drove the blade into the gap between its armor plates. The creature made a gurgling sound and fell. N could not believe what he was seeing. The human was moving so fast. Her soft body twisted and turned in ways that should have been impossible. She was not stronger than she was not faster, but somehow she was always in the right place at the right time, always hitting where they were weak instead of where they were strong. The third was smarter than the others. It circled around Sarah, looking for an opening. Its many eyes studied her, trying to understand what it was fighting. Sarah was breathing hard now. N could see sweat on her face, could see her muscles shaking slightly. She was tired. She was small and soft and her bones broke easily, just like he had said. She could not keep fighting forever. But she did not stop. She did not run. She did not hide. The third made its move. It threw one of its smaller arms at her like a spear. Sarah twisted to avoid it, but the arm blade caught her side, cutting through her uniform and the skin underneath. Red blood, bright and shocking, splashed onto the floor. Sarah made a sound, a grunt of pain, but she did not fall. She did not even slow down. She caught the surreal attack with her stolen blade, turned it aside, and grabbed the creature by what might have been its throat. What happened next would stay in N's memory forever. Sarah lifted the off the ground. It was 3 times her weight, covered in armor with 6 arms trying to cut her apart. But she lifted it anyway, her human muscles straining, her soft skin tearing where the blades touched her. She turned and threw it. She threw it onto his titanium table, the table that had survived warriors, the table that he had bragged about just minutes ago. They hit the table with the sound of breaking worlds. And the table, his beautiful, unbreakable table, bent around the creature's body like it was made of soft clay. The titanium warped and twisted, forming a crater where they had landed. They did not move again. Sarah stood over the body, bleeding from a dozen cuts, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Her dark eyes found in where he was hiding behind the ruined table. "Are you hurt?" she asked. N could not find words. He looked at the 3 dead. He looked at his bent table. He looked at the small human female standing in the middle of it all, covered in blood that was both red and black. "I think," he said slowly, "that I need to update my medical files." Sarah laughed. It was a strange sound, rough and tired, but somehow still warm. "Yeah, doctor, I think maybe you do." The medical bay was quiet now except for the distant sounds of fighting elsewhere on the ship. Smoke hung in the air, mixing with the smell of blood and burned metal. 3 raiders lay dead on the floor, killed by a creature half their size with no natural weapons and bones that broke easily. Sarah leaned against the wall, pressing her hand against the wound in her side. Red blood seeped between her fingers, dripping onto the floor. She was pale, her dark eyes slightly unfocused, but she was still standing, still alive. En slowly came out from behind his ruined table. His legs were shaking. His hearts, both of them, were beating too fast. He had seen death before. He was a doctor, but he had never seen anything like what he had just witnessed. "You are injured," he said. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. "Let me help you." "It is not deep," Sarah said, but she let him guide her to a chair that had somehow survived the fight. She sat down heavily, wincing as the movement pulled at her wounds. En gathered his medical supplies, the ones that had not been destroyed. His hands were still trembling as he began to clean Sarah's wounds. The largest cut was on her side, where the blade had caught her. It was bleeding freely, but she was right. It was not deep enough to damage any organs. "This will need stitches," he said. "Do humans use stitches? I should know this. Why do I not know this?" "We use stitches," Sarah confirmed. There was a hint of amusement in her tired voice. "Your supplies should work fine. Human skin is not that different from most species." En began to work, his 4 hands moving with the careful skill of many years of medical practice. Sarah did not cry out when he pushed the needle through her skin. She did not even flinch. She just sat there, watching him with those dark eyes. "How?" En finally asked. He could not stop himself. The question had been building inside him since the first fell. "How did you do that?" "Do what?" "Everything." He gestured at the dead raiders at the warped titanium table at her own bleeding body. "You are human. Your files say you are weak, your bones break, your skin tears. You have no armor, no weapons, no venom. Those creatures should have killed you in seconds. Instead, you killed them. How?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft, almost gentle. "Doctor, how long have there been a spacefaring species?" The question surprised him. "Almost 8,000 years. Why?" "And in all that time, how many wars have your people fought?" En thought about it. "We have been in several conflicts with other species. Perhaps a dozen serious ones, but we are not a warrior people. We are scientists and builders." "Humans have only been in space for about 200 years, Sarah said. "Before that, we were stuck on Earth. Just one planet in one solar system at the edge of the galaxy. Do you know how many wars we fought while we were stuck there?" "I do not know. The records are not complete." Sarah smiled, but there was no happiness in it. "We stopped counting. There were too many. We fought each other constantly, Doctor. Over land, over food, over ideas, over things that seem stupid now. We built weapons to kill each other more efficiently. We invented new ways to cause pain. We spent thousands of years learning exactly how to break things, including ourselves." She looked down at her wounded side, at the blood still slowly leaking through the stitches. "Do you know what happens when a species spends its entire history fighting? They get very, very good at it. Not because they are strong, not because they are fast, but because they learn. Every battle, every wound, every death teaches them something new." En finished the last stitch and stepped back. "But they are born warriors. They are designed for killing. How can learning compete with that?" "They are strong," Sarah agreed. "They have armor and blades and acid. They are born knowing how to kill. But that is also their weakness. They do not need to learn. They do not need to adapt. They fight the same way they have always fought because that way has always worked." She stood up slowly, testing her wounded side. "Humans have no natural weapons, this is true, so we made weapons out of everything else. Rocks, sticks, metal, words, ideas. When something did not work, we tried something new. When we got hurt, we remembered why and made sure it did not happen again." She walked to the bent titanium table and ran her hand over the warped metal. You said this table could survive a warrior. You were right, but a warrior attacks in a certain way. They use their strength, their weight, their power. The table was built to handle that kind of force. Her fingers traced the outline of this body, still pressed into the metal. I did not attack like a warrior. I used this own weight against it. I threw it at an angle the table was not designed for. I found the weakness and I used it. She turned to face him. That is what humans do, Doctor. We find weaknesses in our enemies, in ourselves, in the universe, and we exploit them. Because if we did not, we would have died a long time ago on our little death world. N was beginning to understand. It was not that humans were strong despite being weak. It was that their weakness had made them something else entirely, something he did not have a word for. The pain, he said slowly, the injuries, they do not stop you. Pain is just information, Sarah said. It tells us something is wrong. It tells us to be careful, but it does not control us. We control it. She touched her wounded side again. This hurts. It hurts a lot, but I have felt worse. I know I will heal. I know I will survive. And that knowledge lets me keep fighting when my body wants to stop. The distant sounds of battle were getting quieter. N wondered if that was good or bad. What about fear? He asked. Are humans not afraid? Sarah laughed softly. Doctor, I was terrified. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. My hands were shaking before I picked up that metal bar. Fear is natural. Fear keeps us alive. Then how did you fight through it? Sarah looked at him with those dark, deep eyes. Because there was something I was more afraid of than dying. I was afraid of letting innocent people get hurt while I did nothing. I was afraid of being the kind of person who hides when others need help. She smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. Humans are strange, Doctor. We will run from danger if we are alone, but put someone else in danger, someone we care about, and suddenly we become very hard to stop. It is not logical. It is not smart, but it is who we are. N looked at the small human female standing in front of him, wounded and tired and still somehow unbroken. He had called her species fragile. He had been very, very wrong. I think, he said quietly, that I have much to learn about humans. Sarah nodded. So do we, Doctor, so do we. We are still figuring ourselves out. But that is another thing about humans. We never stop learning. The door to the medical bay opened, and a squad of ship security officers rushed in. They stopped when they saw the dead, the destroyed table, and the bleeding human standing in the middle of it all. Lieutenant Commander, one of them asked, "Are you all right?" Sarah gave a tired salute. "Fine, Sergeant, just a few scratches. How is the rest of the ship?" "The attack is over. We won." The sergeant looked at the 3 dead raiders. "Did you do this alone?" "I had help," Sarah said, glancing at N. "The doctor was very brave." N knew this was not true. He had hidden behind a table while she fought, but he also understood why she said it. Humans protected each other in many ways, not just with violence. He was beginning to understand humans, and he was beginning to understand why the galaxy should be very, very careful around them. 3 days had passed since the attack. The Serenity's mandate was limping toward the nearest space station for repairs, moving slowly through the stars like a wounded animal. But it was alive. The ship had survived, and so had most of its crew. N stood in what remained of his medical bay, watching repair robots weld new panels onto the walls. His beautiful titanium table had been removed, taken away as evidence and, he suspected, as something to study. He did not mind. Every time he looked at it, he remembered that day. He remembered learning that everything he thought he knew about humans was wrong. The door opened and Sarah walked in. She moved carefully, still healing from her wounds. Her arm was in a sling made of white fabric, and N could see bandages under her uniform. But she was walking. 3 days after fighting 3 warriors alone, she was up and moving around like it was nothing special. "Doctor," she said, nodding at him, How is the medical bay coming along? Slowly, N admitted. Most of my equipment was destroyed. It will take weeks to replace everything. He paused, looking at her sling. How is your arm? Fractured in 2 places. Sarah said it casually, like she was talking about the weather. The bone cracked when I threw that last. Too much force, not enough support. Classic mistake. N felt his mandibles click in distress. You should not be walking around. You should be in bed resting. I have been resting for 3 days. That is enough. Sarah walked to where the titanium table used to be and stood there, looking at the empty space. Besides, I wanted to check on you, make sure you were okay. This surprised N. Me. Why would you check on me? I am not the one who was injured. Sarah turned to look at him. Her dark eyes were soft, understanding. Doctor, you watched 3 people die violently in front of you. You thought you were going to be killed. That kind of experience leaves marks, even when the body is not hurt. N was quiet. He had not told anyone about the dreams he had been having. Dreams where the broke through the door again and again, where Sarah was not there to save him, where the blade came down and everything ended. He woke up every night with both hearts racing, his shell wet with fear sweat. I am fine, he said, but his voice was not convincing even to himself. Sarah walked over to him and did something unexpected. She reached up and put her small, soft hand on his arm. The touch was gentle, careful, like she knew how to give comfort even to species very different from her own. It is okay to not be fine, she said quietly. Humans learned that the hard way. We spent centuries telling ourselves to be strong, to not show weakness, to push through everything alone. It broke a lot of us. Now we know better. Now we know that asking for help is not weakness. It is wisdom. N looked down at her hand on his arm. Such a small hand. Such fragile bones underneath that soft skin. And yet this hand had killed 3 warriors and warped solid titanium. I have been having bad dreams, he admitted. I keep seeing the attack over and over. Sarah nodded. That is normal. Your mind is trying to process what happened. It takes time. Sometimes it helps to talk about it. Sometimes it helps to stay busy. Everyone is different. How do humans handle it? N asked. You have so many wars, so much violence in your history. How do you survive the memories? Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking. We help each other, she finally said. That is the real secret of humans, Doctor, not our ability to fight, our ability to heal each other. When one of us is broken, the others gather around and help put them back together. We tell stories. We share our pain. We remind each other that we are not alone. She squeezed his arm gently. You saved yourself by hiding. That was smart. If you had tried to fight, you would be dead, and I would have been distracted trying to protect you. Your survival helped me survive. Remember that. N had not thought about it that way. He had felt ashamed of hiding, of being useless while Sarah fought. But she was right. If he had been in danger, she would have tried to protect him. His safety had given her freedom to fight without worry. I have been thinking, N said slowly, about what you told me, about humans finding weaknesses and using them. I realized something. What? That is exactly what doctors do. N gestured around the damaged medical bay. We look at bodies and find what is wrong. We find the weakness, the disease, the injury, and then we fix it. We use our knowledge to heal instead of hurt. Sarah smiled. It was a warm smile, the kind that made her strange face look almost beautiful. You are right. I never thought about it that way. Doctors and warriors are not so different. Both of them look for weak points. One just has a different goal. Perhaps that is why humans produced so many good doctors, N said. You understand weakness better than any other species, because you live with it every day. Maybe. Sarah leaned against the wall, careful not to put pressure on her injured side. Or maybe we just really hate seeing people suffer. When you know what pain feels like, you want to stop others from feeling it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside the window, stars drifted slowly past. The universe was vast and dark and full of dangers, but somehow, standing here with this small human, N felt safer than he had in a long time. "I have a request," he said finally. "What is it?" "I would like to interview more humans, to study them. Not their bodies this time, but their minds, their history, their way of thinking." He looked at her seriously. "I was wrong about your species, Lieutenant Commander. I looked at your bones and your skin and saw weakness. I did not see what was underneath. I want to understand." Sarah nodded slowly. "I think that could be arranged. Humans love talking about themselves. It is one of our many flaws." "Flaws that might be strengths in disguise," N suggested. "Now you are getting it." Sarah pushed herself off the wall and walked toward the door. At the entrance, she stopped and looked back. "Doctor, can I give you one piece of advice?" "Please." "Do not try to be like humans. Your species has survived 8,000 years in space being who you are. That means something. Learn from us, yes. Understand us, yes. But do not lose yourself trying to copy us. The galaxy needs scientists and builders. It does not need trying to be human warriors." And considered this. "Then what should we do?" "What you have always done: study, learn, build, create. And when humans come to you broken and bleeding from our endless fights, put us back together." Sarah smiled one more time. "Every warrior needs a healer, Doctor. Maybe that is why the universe put our species in the same galaxy. We break things. You fix them. Together we might actually survive." She left, her footsteps quiet in the corridor outside. N stood alone in his damaged medical bay, thinking about warriors and healers, about weakness and strength, about the strange small species that had turned the galaxy's understanding upside down. He had much work to do, much to learn, much to understand. He could not wait to get started. 6 months after the attack, Dr. N stood before the Galactic Medical Council. The Great Hall was filled with doctors and scientists from over 100 different species. They sat in rising rows of seats, their various eyes and sensors all focused on him. Some had traveled for weeks to hear his presentation. Word had spread across the galaxy about the doctor who had witnessed something extraordinary. N had prepared for this moment for months. He had interviewed dozens of humans. He had studied their history, their biology, their psychology. He had filled thousands of pages with notes and observations, and now he was ready to share what he had learned. "Distinguished colleagues," he began, his translator turning his clicks and whistles into words that all could understand. "6 months ago, I was a doctor who thought he understood humans. I had read all the standard files. I knew their physical specifications. I knew their weaknesses." He activated the holographic display behind him. An image appeared showing a human skeleton, the white bones standing out against a dark background. "I looked at this and saw fragility, calcium bones that break under minimal stress, no natural armor, slow healing times. By every measurement we use, humans should be one of the weakest species in the galaxy." He changed the image. Now it showed Sarah standing over 3 dead warriors, blood on her hands and fire in her eyes. The image was from a security recording, captured during the attack. "Then I watched a human female kill 3 raiders in close combat using nothing but a metal bar and her own 2 hands. She fractured her arm, warping a titanium table with one of their bodies. And when I asked her how she did it, she told me something that changed everything I thought I knew." N paused, letting the image sink in. The council members were very quiet. Many of them had never seen real violence before. They were scientists and healers, not warriors. Looking at Sarah's fierce face in the image, they were beginning to understand what N had felt that day in the medical bay. "I measured the wrong things," N said. "We all did. We looked at human bodies and counted their weaknesses. We never stopped to ask how those weaknesses had shaped them. We never considered that what we saw as flaws might actually be their greatest strengths." He changed the display again. Now it showed a long list of human achievements scrolling past almost too fast to read. Wars survived. diseases conquered, technologies invented, worlds colonized. The list went on and on. Humans evolved on a Category 7 death world with none of the usual survival tools. No armor, no venom, no claws, so they adapted in other ways. They learned to think. They learned to plan. They learned to work together. And most importantly, they learned to keep going when everything told them to stop. N walked to the front of the stage looking out at his audience. Their bones break easily. This is true, but here is what I did not understand. Every time a human bone breaks, it heals back stronger than before. Every injury teaches them something. Every failure makes them more determined. Humans do not avoid damage. They absorb it. They transform it. They use it. He thought about Sarah, about all the humans he had met in the past 6 months, about their scars and their stories and their stubborn refusal to give up no matter what the universe threw at them. The human word for this is, he continued, most things in the universe are either fragile, which means they break under stress, or robust, which means they resist stress. Humans are neither. They actually get stronger from stress. They need challenges to grow. They need obstacles to overcome. Without them, they become restless and unhappy. A doctor in the front row raised a tentacle. This is interesting biology, Dr. N, but how does it affect medical treatment? In every way, N answered. Standard medical practice across the galaxy is to minimize patient stress. We give pain medication. We recommend bed rest. We tell patients to avoid anything difficult until they are fully healed. For most species, this works well. He shook his head, his antennae moving with the gesture. For humans, this is exactly wrong. Human patients who are given nothing to do become depressed. Their healing slows down. They lose motivation. Human patients need goals. They need challenges. They need something to fight against, even if it is just a physical therapy exercise. He changed the display one more time. Now it showed a graph comparing human healing rates under different conditions. The difference was dramatic. Humans who had goals and challenges healed almost twice as fast as those who did not. We have been treating humans like they are weak beings who need protection. But humans do not want protection. They want purpose. They want to feel useful. They want to contribute even when they are injured, especially when they are injured. N looked at the graph for a moment, remembering all the human patients he had treated over the past months, remembering how they asked to help even when they could barely walk, remembering how they worried about others even when they themselves were in pain. There is one more thing I learned about humans, he said quietly, something that surprised me more than their strength or their stubbornness. He turned back to face the council. They care, deeply and sometimes irrationally. They will risk their own lives to save strangers. They will push through any amount of pain to protect someone they love. The same human who complains about a small cut on their finger will walk through fire to save a child. He thought about Sarah checking on him 3 days after the attack, thought about her hand on his arm, her voice gentle and concerned. She had been more injured than him, but she had come to make sure he was okay. I asked a human once why they do this, why they sacrifice themselves for others. She told me that when you know what pain feels like, you want to stop others from feeling it. When you understand suffering, you cannot ignore it in someone else. N returned to his place at the podium. The holographic display turned off, leaving just him standing before the silent council. My recommendation is this, he said. We must update all our medical files on humans. We must change how we treat them. We must stop seeing them as fragile creatures to be protected and start seeing them as what they really are. He paused, remembering the titanium table bent around this body, remembering Sarah's smile as she stood over her defeated enemies, remembering her words about human spirits not breaking even when human bones do. Humans are not persistence predators. They are inevitability predators. No matter how hard you knock them down, they will get back up. No matter how badly you hurt them, they will heal. No matter how impossible the odds, they will find a way. It is not a question of if humans will succeed. It is only a question of when. He looked out at the hundreds of doctors and scientists watching him. Some looked scared. Some looked fascinated. Some looked like their entire understanding of the universe had been shaken. And if we are wise, In finished, we will make sure they remain our friends. Because everything I once saw as weakness, I now understand as something the galaxy has never seen before. Humanity does not avoid being broken. They have simply made being broken into a weapon. And I, for one, am very glad they have chosen to use that weapon to protect us rather than against us. He bowed his head in the gesture of completion. Thank you for your attention. I will now take questions. The hall erupted in noise as hundreds of doctors tried to speak at once. They had questions. So many questions. About humans, about medicine, about everything In had learned. He smiled, or at least made the expression that meant the same thing. 6 months ago, he had thought he understood humans. Now he knew he had barely scratched the surface. But he had time. Humans were not going anywhere, and neither was he. There was so much more to learn.